Okay, it's recording. Also the overseers of the financial and regulatory filings of the organization, that a lot of that are things that have been put in place recently. So those are things that, the trustees have to sort of address and so on. They're also responsible for the continuity of the organization if the founder is no longer around. So I think what we're finding is that, once NGOs reach a certain point, there has to be a transition that happens in order to ensure the continued existence of the NGO. And that is where an NGO board is extremely important. Overall, it's a safety net for the mission. It is providing assistance to the organization as needed. So it's not just reliant, the organization is not just reliant on the founder and a few people, but there is a whole group of people that typically is assembled by the founder. So what should the profile of an NGO board trustees look like? So like I said, at the outset, an NGO founder will typically engage friends and associates who are really passionate about the mission of the organization. And these people will do everything from fundraising to volunteer recruitment. And I'm thinking of, of NGOs who don't have a lot of money and don't have a lot of requirements for, a lot of staff, right? So a lot of the work is done by volunteers. So they do it with volunteers so that they don't have to pay people. So the initial group will take on the tasks of fundraising, of volunteer recruitment, of finance and accounting, of legal and regulatory filings, technology, social media and marketing. A lot of people will bring in an expert or a specialist, an accountant or a lawyer, but they will stay engaged as sponsors for that area. So that's the purpose of having a trustee take responsibility for, let's say, the technology piece. Because it's not something that the NGO can readily afford, but you will have the trustee find, trusted friends and within their circle who will assist and help and kind of get the organization up and running. Another important person that the board should have is an expert in the area that the NGO specializes in. So a financial expert, if it's a microfinance organization, somebody who's been in operations, if it's a small scale manufacturing organization, or a practicing psychologist, if it's a suicide helpline, as is the case in the organization that I am a part of. The board should also have someone who already runs an NGO, like a fairly successful NGO. And what I want to say to you all is that I think you just have to ask. If you ask, people will be very willing to come in as a trustee. It just, I think it's a thing that we have that, we don't really feel comfortable asking people to do this for us. But I think that a lot of people are interested in giving back with sometimes a lot of contribution, but not all the time. So what I say is that as the organization evolves and, it kind of gets its legs, the role of the early trustees will kind of reduce. And mostly they will be providing oversight and advice, but only as needed. So I'm going to spend a few minutes now talking about connecting. I know the name is very similar to ConnectFor, but the NGO that I support and I'm a trustee of is called Connecting NGO. It's a almost 100% volunteer-based listening service based in Pune, which was established in 2005. So it's about 18 years old now. She continues by Arnavaz Damania. She's 84. She continues to run the organization as a managing trustee. And she has recently taken on a co-managing trustee, Sandy, who's a younger person and also happens to be a practicing psychologist. It's only one of 14 suicide helplines across the country, and it's the only one of its kind in Pune. So the basis of Arnavaz's vision was to have a place where if you are, if you need to talk to someone, there is somebody to listen to you. So there is a conversation and a listening space that is created through connecting, and that's the philosophy. That there's no judgment, there is no advice. It is just listening, right? And only volunteers provide the service because she wants people to help others because they want to, not because they're getting paid to do it. So this is just a little capsule of connecting. Now, in the early days of connecting, the board of trustees was formed right away, but it was the founder and a group of close friends. And it was run almost entirely by volunteers, as I mentioned. Some of the things that Arnavaz did was she brought in a professor as a volunteer who was specializing in the area of suicide prevention to train the first set of volunteers, who then became trainers of other volunteers. So the core crux of the organization is volunteers and trained volunteers, right? Fundraising was done by the same group. Local service providers provided accounting, finance, and legal services at very low prices. And in those days, the regulatory environment for NGOs was also fairly reasonable. So this is where the organization started, and there was a board of trustees. It was, like I said, more like a group of friends and they didn't have an office and so on. But as the original founders and trustees of Connecting aged, and the environment, the regulatory environment around nonprofits also evolved, a lot of things changed. So it became imperative that a younger set of trustees be brought in to make sure that the work doesn't, the organization doesn't just disappear when this core group of people starts to age. So a good transformation requires that visionary founder who is aware of flagging energies and interest among the trustees and all the people that she surrounded herself with, and is able to make the necessary adjustments. So Arnavaz did bring in over the last couple of years, a lawyer, a doctor, and somebody who's actually looking at new ways to manage medical practices, a social media specialist, and me, who's an aspiring philanthropist and a general manager. So I think this is the foresight that is required of all of you founders, right? To kind of think about what happens in case you want, you basically, like I said in the beginning, you need a safety net. You need to have a group of people who may not be able to give you full-time attention, but are there on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis to kind of talk through and help hold up your organization as needed. So that's the purpose of it. So this organization has run for 18 years, but just about 4 or 5 months ago is when we began the transformation, where a couple of years is when Arnavaz started it, and then we kind of continued it. So the new group of trustees, along with some members of the original group, kind of did a whole review of the mission and the vision, along with the managing trustee, along with Arnavaz, along with all the senior members, right? So it's not something that you're saying, okay, now you're done and we're going to take over. It is an engagement, and it is a collaborative thing where we say that this set of trustees is now, kind of looking to see what happens next. So what this group of trustees now did is really kind of spend time and effort and energy, which was necessary at that time. Now, this is not something that is easy to do unless you have people like, the lawyers and the kind of group that you can put together with trustees, because employees you will not be able to find. It's very expensive, right? And so what we did was we did a series of 3 workshops, brought everybody together. We identified that one of the reasons why one of the gaps was a consistent professional leadership of the organization. Other things were, fundraising strategy was a little ad hoc, which needed to, because of the strict rules around CSR funds and so on, you really have to sort of, put all your things in place as well. The HR policy had to be fine-tuned, and we needed to put a really concerted effort on connecting core strength, which is training the volunteers. So the trustees recruited a CEO and a training lead. They worked together to formulate a new HR policy. And now we're getting to the point where this group of trustees is now is ready to step back, leave the organization to evolve and grow, and because there's a new CEO in place. And this is, I think, what I wanted to kind of communicate is that an NGO board is it evolves over a period of time. So it is a process that must be repeated as needed. In this case, it has been 18 years since, one way has been running, and now there's a slightly different way that has been introduced. But it has to be monitored by a vigilant managing trustee. It has, or most likely that person is the founder, supported by a group of trustees that are involved and present, ready to step in as and when needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya, for sharing amazing insights. I think we all just thought that it was an example of like connecting NGO, but it was like a life cycle for like all the non-profits to understand from where exactly they need to look into, like, board of members, where they need to, like, get new members, how they can get, and how you can build the connection, because that's how you can run the organization. Otherwise it becomes very restricted, and if at a time if that person is no longer working with that organization, your organization, like, model, process, structure, everything will, like, may get spoiled. So that's the whole point of, like, understanding it through an organization's example. So thank you so much, Priya, for highlighting that. Now I would like to invite Neha Chavda, who's going to give you more details on what sort of like board members are there, how they can support you, what are their roles and responsibility. Yeah, Neha, over to you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. I'll just take a minute to share my presentation.
Sure, no problem.
Can everyone see this? Am I audible?
Yeah, we can see your screen and you're audible as well.
Thank you so much. I think Priya fairly covered, how an NGO board should look like. I remember when I was getting my nonprofit registered, there were so many things coming to my mind that, how many board members should be there and what is the roles and responsibility of the board member. And most importantly, because, I was coming from an HR and marketing background, so I had less of an idea, how to reach out to the development sector professionals. So I think I really leveraged LinkedIn there in terms of reaching out to them. And then fairly, I was able to, get a couple of board members on board. So, moving on to the next section, talking about the committees, which are essential for the nonprofits. So like any for-profit organization, in an NGO also, there should be certain verticals which ensures that, the organization is functioning in the appropriate way. So ideally, if you talk about, there should be 5, essential committees for the nonprofits. The first one is the finance committee. The second one is the executive committee. The third one is the fundraising or the development committee. There is another committee called as the governance committee, and the fifth one is the program committee. So one by one, we will be covering, the roles and responsibility of the different kinds of committee. So talking about the finance committee, so of course, the annual budgeting, the cash inflows, how the financial vitals of a company runs. So the finance committee is entrusted with the responsibility of that, right? So the finance committee takes care of, whatever, money is coming in, and how, the financial reporting has to be done, how the tax filings have to be done. And they are one of the most important pillars in any nonprofit, right? In any organization for that matter. So, if an NGO is small, if we talk about a grassroots NGO who are just starting off, who have got very few people, on board whom they can actually leverage. So I would really suggest, to keep a finance committee in place, because that is considered to be one of the most important pillars for any nonprofit, right? So typically, if you talk about, the strength of any finance committee, they should have at least 3 to 5 members. And so if they are coming from a finance background, then definitely they will be able to add more value, right? So let's say if, they have been into the non-profit, financial reporting, that is even better, right? So certain professionals who are, coming from that particular background, they add more value to the finance committee there. The second committee is the executive committee. The executive committee, more or less acts like an advisory for the board, right? So they act as a steering committee for the board, so trying to align the mission, the vision of the organization, and, trying to, advise the board that how they can function in the appropriate way. So typically they consist of at least 4 or 5 members. Again, these 4 or 5 members are coming from diversified background. They could be coming from the corporate, they could be coming from the nonprofit sector, they could be coming from the startup ecosystem, right? So again, they are coming from the different kind of backgrounds. So if I tell about, the executive committee, what, they consist of, so they typically have got, 5 members. So one is the board president, right? So one is the board chair who actually heads that particular committee. And then the roles and responsibility, boils down to the vice president, the secretary. If at all they have a treasurer in place, otherwise, the finance committee is there to take care of, of the financial budgeting and the cash inflows and stuff like that. And if at all they have a past president, someone who was, kind of leading the executive committee, then they can also be a part of this particular, committee so that they can advise them, right? So executive committee, again, it can be an add-on for many nonprofits. It may or may not be there. If I talk about the mid-size or the seasoned NGOs, NGOs who have been into the ecosystem for, let's say, more than 5-6 years or almost a decade, they might be having an executive committee in place, right? But for the small nonprofits, again, they really need to take a call that, they might or might not have an executive committee. And, basically they can have just 2 or 3 committees, which we can just talk once we move on. The third committee is the fundraising committee. Again, fundraising is one of the most important, activities for any nonprofit, one of the most important pillars for any nonprofit. So the fundraising committee, it takes care of how, the fundraising events will be conducted, how, the fundraising activity will be conducted for the organization for that particular year. They kind of carve out the development plan. They kind of carve out that how the organization can conduct, the fundraising events. This could be in the form of crowdfunding. This could be in the form of, some online event through which they are, kind of pooling in money, or it could be through, let's say, marathons, right? So in that context, the fundraising committee with its members carves out that how, the organization can take care of the different fundraising activities and how they can sustain, their different projects. So a fundraising committee typically includes 3 to 5 members. Again, they include both the board members and the non-board members. So there could be 2 or 3 members, from the board itself who are a part of the, of the fundraising committee, so that they are aware of, how the finances are being used. The next committee is the governance committee. The governance committee more or less takes care of how the compliances are met in the context of a nonprofit. The compliances in the context of the different stakeholders, right? So how the donor compliance has been done, how the CSR compliance has been done, how the different stakeholder, compliance has been done. So this is how, the governance committee guides the nonprofit. So they definitely make recommendations to the board in terms of, the government policies, the practices pertaining to the nonprofit organization. And they definitely review and approve any changes, which is, kind of recommended by the board, how they need to, kind of take care of the different policies and the ethical considerations. So most committees in the governance, they include at least 3 members. So again, there is a mix of board and non-board members, right? And, so that they are adding value to the committee and they are coming from diversified backgrounds. The last committee which a nonprofit has, or let's say, this add-on committee, is the program committee. This is again a very important part for any nonprofit functioning. A program committee, takes care of the different initiatives, the different projects which are running in any nonprofit. A nonprofit has got simultaneously so many projects going on, and we have got so many program leads taking care of the different programs. So a program committee takes care of monitoring, how the different projects have been, implemented. if at all there has been any gap in that. So they take care of the evaluation of the different kinds of programs which are being conducted by the nonprofit. And they take care that if, the compliances are being met or not. So typically the program committee should have a minimum of, 3 members, of whom 2 members should be the board members. Again, trying to make sure that the board is aware of each and every activity going on in the organization. So that is the reason, why they are keeping at least two board members here, right? So, all right. So, this was about the different kinds of committees, how the different committees are helping the nonprofits. So again, depending on the size of the organization, there could be 2 or 3 committees, or there could be 5 committees. Again, depending on how many people, a nonprofit is able to, get on board. If you talk about a small or a grassroots NGO, for them, let's say, typically 3 committees will be most essential, a finance committee, a program committee, and a fundraising committee, right? But as an NGO grows, as an NGO becomes seasoned, they try to be more structured, and then, they try to get more committees on board, right? So this is how, typically the different kind of committees and their roles. Yeah, Aishwarya. So I think, I have covered that.
Thank you so much, Neha, for sharing, like a quick understanding on why the board members and what sort of responsibilities they can take up. It was great to have you and Priya sharing your experiences. Before we go ahead, I will quickly keep this open for the Q&A section. So we have received one question. Do or can members overlap across various committees? Because onboarding of so many people seems tough for small NGO like us. So this was a question raised by one of our participants. So if any of you would like to answer, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that definitely there is a lot of multitasking that happens. And I think I tend to agree, because there seems to be a lot of people in the different committees. In the smaller NGOs, and especially like ours, we do a lot of multitasking, and there's I wouldn't actually even call them committees. We would call them just kind of functional, functional areas that trustees decide that they're going to take on, So the lawyer is going to take on all the legal stuff, and I address all the business and HR stuff, and, and so on. So that's how I don't think it's difficult. I think that to have so many people, right? But I don't know, Neha, you probably have more experience with a larger NGO, so you can address that better.
In fact, I have worked with smaller NGOs more. So I think I can totally resonate with this question that, it is very difficult to onboard many people, for small NGOs. So just try to tap into, your LinkedIn network. This is what I've realized, that leveraging LinkedIn has been one of the most important tools and one of the most successful tools for my NGO. We used to write to people who are coming from, the social sector, seasoned people. And we used to ask them if at all they would like to join our board, right? And this is how we used to reach out to them. And so I can totally resonate that, yes, having different committees for small NGOs will be very tough. And this is what we also realized initially. But, one has to wear multiple hats in the social impact, right? So you cannot define, one job for one person. So there could be someone who's got specialized skills, in terms of, let's say, in HR, but at the same time is also open to kind of, networking with people, networking with people through LinkedIn, right? And, kind of also contributing or getting someone who has got expertise in fundraising. So one person, could share the knowledge so that you are able to, kind of get more people on board, or probably, also try to train the same person on multiple things. We have got people who didn't had any idea on how to drive social media, causes. So we, these people, they were coming from HR background. They were coming from a non-marketing background. So again, while you're forming committees, also see that, if you are able to get those people who can add value and who are also open in terms of, getting trained or learning. So this is what we had done in our nonprofit. So I think, you can also adapt something like that, in terms of asking one person, being open to, doing new things, right? So that can be another thing.
Yeah, I think that's true. And one more thing which, like, we feel is that when someone is joining as board of member, that person is coming with a lot of experience in different sectors. Like the person must have worked in corporate sector, maybe in development sector, also like in different areas in different sector, like marketing, HR, communications, and maybe fundraising as well. So maybe like getting someone who has like, like maybe different sort of at least two skills, if a person can cover, that person maybe would be a ideal person for you to like, have in your board. So that way you would be able to like, save time of like, um reaching out to a lot of people as well, and you will be able to like build network as well, and even your organization would be running like smoothly. So I think I agree with Neha and Priya, both the example that they have given. I think that is going to be a great learning for small organizations who have recently started and who's maybe planning to like, create board. So I think that's completely true. Moving next, if anyone would like to ask anything to our speakers, please feel free to ask.
Aishwarya, I just wanted to add
Yeah,
one thing.
yeah,
When people are looking for board members, I think the most important thing that you have to look for is a passion or an interest in the work that you're doing. In the NGO that I'm involved in, it's mental health related. I have a very personal interest in mental health, and so it resonates with me. I think that's one thing. The second thing is that um, I think if you target people who've been in the corporate world for a long time as opposed to the development sector, it's a really nice perspective that they bring to the table. Plus, there's a lot of people in the corporate sector who are kind of a little tired of the greed and the and the kind of the rat race, and are happy to kind of you have to find the right people, because I think they have to commit some time, right? They have to kind of commit some serious time from time to time. So I think that's the other thing when you're looking for board members, is to keep in mind that not just it doesn't have to just be development people from the development sector. It can also be people from the corporate world who are sort of a little jaded and kind of want to do something more fulfilling.
of course, that's absolutely true. If anyone would like to ask anything, I would like you to raise your hand so you can directly ask your question to our speakers. I think there are no such questions, but maybe after the session, if you feel that you wanted to like, ask something, but yeah, is
Hello.
anyone trying to ask anything?
Hello.
Yeah, please
Hello.
go ahead.
हाँ नमस्ते मैम, चंद्रकांत घेर पाटिल बात कर रहा हूँ हिंगोली
हाँ
महाराष्ट्र से।
बताइए, हाँ आप बताइए।
हाँ, अभी नेहा मैम ने लिंक्डइन के बारे में बताया थोड़ा सा। लिंक्डइन में हमने जो कैसा फंड रेजिंग के लिए क्या है, थोड़ा सा डिटेल उन्होंने अगर बताया तो फंड रेज के लिए हमें भी सपोर्ट हो जाएगा। थोड़ा सा कैसा यूज करना है लिंक्डइन।
चंद्रकांत जी।
हेलो।
या तो मैं बेसिकली बता रही थी कि अगर आपको लिंक्डइन को यूज करना है इन टर्म्स ऑफ रीचिंग आउट टू पीपल, तो ये मैं स्पेशली बोर्ड मेंबर्स की बात कर रही थी, राइट? पीपल हु कैन बी अ पार्ट ऑफ योर कमिटी। एंड जैसे प्रिया ने बोला, in the corporate world there are many people who have achieved whatever they had set for in lives, and now they are tired of being a part of the rat race, and they will be very much open towards joining a non-profit board. So I was majorly talking about how these people can be a part of your committee, and they can contribute there. But LinkedIn can also be leveraged in terms of reaching out to CEOs of companies, right? तो पहले आप ये देखिए कि आपका जो NGO है उसके मिशन के साथ वो कॉर्पोरेट का मिशन अलाइन हो रहा है कि नहीं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, हम लोगों ने एक कोडाथॉन किया था, जिसके बाद हम लोगों ने रियलाइज किया कि बहुत सारे नॉन प्रॉफिट्स के पास स्मार्टफोन्स नहीं है, लैपटॉप्स नहीं है। तो हमने सोचा कि वी शुड बी काइंड ऑफ रीचिंग आउट टू CEOs of companies of basically edtech companies who will be able to resonate with our mission, right? तो उसमें हम लोगों ने कुछ 2-3 CEOs को लिखा, हमें अच्छा रिस्पॉन्स भी मिला था, ये हमने LinkedIn के थ्रू किया था. So, just trying to tell you there that LinkedIn can be leveraged, but pehle, you have to be clear about your organization's mission. For example, अगर आपका organization education space में operate करता है, तो आप ऐसे ही corporates को approach करिए जो education based initiatives को support करेंगे. जैसे हम लोगों ने किया था during that particular campaign. And, then you will be able to get some conversion on that, right? So I think, currently we aren't talking about how LinkedIn can be leveraged in terms of the fundraising part of it. I hope that ConnectFor conducts that particular session as well. But agar aap LinkedIn ki baat kare, to, if you actually want to if you want to connect with the CEOs of company, you really have to see that if they are resonating with your company's vision or not. Only then they will, contribute money, right?
I absolutely agree with Neha and Chandrakant ji. हमने एक webinar किया था leverage LinkedIn and वो webinar directly fundraising पे focus करता है, तो मैं आपको उसकी link भेज दूंगी ताकि आप ये webinar के बाद भी आप check कर सकें और ये webinar का link भी मैं आपको share कर दूंगी. Yeah, this webinar link will be shared with everyone post Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions that you would like to ask? I think there are no such questions at this moment, but maybe post the webinar, if anyone come across any question which you feel would relate to Neha and Priya and the topic that they have covered, please get back to us. We will try asking on email. So once we get the response, we will share it with you. Yeah. Also, just to quickly end with the webinar, we ConnectFor is painting schools across India. So if you have schools in Delhi, Gurgaon, or maybe other locations in Mumbai as well, and if we are okay with shelter home as well and center as well. So if you have anything like this, please reach out to us at ops@connectfor.org. I'll drop my email address below so you can get in touch with me. But yeah, just to end with the webinar, I would like to thank you, Neha and Priya, for coming and sharing wonderful thoughts. We have received great feedback from our participants as well, that it's a great webinar for small NGOs. It's something that they have never maybe explored or maybe never thought that how the board and team members should work. So it was a great experience for them as well. And it's ConnectFor's pleasure to have both of you for this webinar. Thank you so much for coming and sharing wonderful thoughts. And I would like to thank all our participants for coming today. If you have any question, as I mentioned, you can get in touch with us. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you so much, everyone. Nice meeting you, Priya. Thank you, Aishwarya.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.